Miami Dolphins general manager John Eric Sullivan is on a generational run of telling us what he's going to do. They've done it again with Aaron Brewer.
You are Locked On Dolphins, your daily Miami Dolphins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Miami, welcome to another episode of Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day here on the Locked On Network. I'm your host, Kyle Krabs, lifelong Miami Dolphins fan, host of Locked On Dolphins, co-host of Locked On NFL Scouting, author of Touchdown Miami on Substack, NFL staff writer for A to Z Sports. And today's episode of Locked On Dolphins is committed to Aaron Brewer, as we are all members of the Brew crew today. It was announced last night that the Dolphins and Brewer had agreed to terms on a 3-year contract extension to help keep the second team All-Pro center in South Florida for an additional 3 seasons beyond 2026. This is excellent news as far as I'm concerned, because teams usually don't let good offensive linemen out the door without a good reason. And I know Aaron Brewer, a little bit unorthodox, maybe some questions about scheme specificity with Mike McDaniel and how valuable he is with different schemes in place. I assure you, watching him play, this is a guy whose skill set is going to translate to just about any offense in the NFL now that he has built up his time on task at the center position. Remember, he came to Miami with only half a season worth of play at the center position during his time in Tennessee. He hadn't played the same position in back-to-back seasons going back to high school. So Aaron Brewer, 3 years, $52.5 million on the contract extension. There's lots of numbers that we still need to find out. We need to figure out what the signing bonus is to be able to tell you what the salary cap charge is, although the Dolphins have about $12.5 million in cap space. So they could allot this however they would like and be able to accommodate it against salary cap. Brew, of course, had a portion of his salary for this year already converted over into a restructure conversion for salary cap purposes back in March to help the team with their salary cap compliance amidst the Jalen Waddle trade and kind of that extra infusion of cap debt, which the team has really rolled up, and they're through the hard part of that now. Super excited for Aaron Brewer individually as a player. Phenomenal player. I know I've kind of said my piece on whether I think he's a scheme-specific talent or he's not. I would like to see what it looks like with good guard play next to him, because everybody knows we've been complaining about the guard play in South Florida for a while, right? It was even the last time you felt great about the guards was Isaiah Wynn and Robert Hunt in 23, and Wynn went down in week 6, and Hunt was in and out of the lineup all season long with a hamstring, and then left and got a $100 million contract by the Carolina Panthers. So it's been a minute, and the guard play has really been a hardship for Aaron Brewer on either side of him, and yet he has been unquestionably an impact player in the middle of your offensive line, one of the more unique offensive linemen in the league, kind of a rags to riches story, like the NFL version of the American dream, the old school American dream, is if you work for it, you can go out and be anything that you want. Well, Brewer was grossly undersized, undrafted out of Texas State, pinballs around on spots on Tennessee's offensive line, never really settles into a spot, signs in Miami on a middle-class contract for what he could be as a center within the outside zone scheme that they're running, becomes a sensational player, earns what is the 3rd highest annual average of a center contract currently in the NFL. So just a quick rundown through some of the numbers. For just the center position, $17.5 million per season across 3 seasons, ranks behind just Creed Humphrey, who is at $18 million, and he signed his deal back in 2024, and Tyler Linderbaum, who of course blew the lid off the center market this offseason when the Raiders paid the bad team tax in free agency and paid him $27 million a year across 3 seasons for a $27 million average, $81 million in total value, and guaranteed at signing was $60 million of that. $81 million is practically guaranteed. Like, Linderbaum almost got a fully guaranteed 3-year contract to go to Las Vegas. Some other center contracts in this ballpark. Cam Jurgens with the Eagles last year was at 17, so Brewer slots between Creed Humphrey and Cam Jurgens. Connor McGovern re-signed with Buffalo this offseason on a 4 for 52. That's a $13 million average. And then you're at Eric McCoy, 5 for 60 back in 2022. He's still playing on that deal. Elgton Jenkins this year in free agency was released by the Packers and signed with the Browns, 2 for 24 as a 30-year-old veteran center. That's kind of the current active top of market contracts at the center position, and Brew top 3 in that regard. We'll talk more about like the wins and losses for each side of the fence. That's how I kind of have grown to like talking about these extensions, and we'll get more idea on once we get the details of the signing bonus and what the cash raise is for Brewer this year as far as what side that piece of this falls on for who should feel best about it. But I do have a couple of wins for either camp as a part of the negotiation. But yeah, this is John Eric Sullivan kind of told us outright, right? This is just the latest example of our intentions this offseason are A, B, C, X, Y, and Z. And they have done A, B, C, X, and now Y, right? We'll see about Jordan Brooks if he ends up being Z as the last shoe to fall from a contract extension standpoint. Patrick Paul was mentioned as a building block when Sullivan took the job, but he's only 2 years in on his rookie contract. You're not eligible to sign a contract extension until after you've played 3 years and have 3 years of tenure. So Pat Paul is probably somebody they will aggressively attack early next offseason if he plays to the standard that he set for himself last season or plays better. And that would be great news for Pat because that would probably be a significant chunk of money for the nucleus of this offensive line being Aaron Brewer and Patrick Paul. But for Brew, I think one of the big interesting things to come out of this contract is the fact that he's signing it at age 20. He's 28. He turns 29 in October. So he's kind of in this weird limbo where a lot of the guys that are playing on rookie contracts are signing 3 or 4 year deals when they're age 25. Brew signing this at 28 going on 29, which one of the wins that I have for Brewer in this extension is that it is a 3-year deal. So he has a chance if he plays this year, 27 and 28, and he plays to the same standard, he could be going on his age 32 season in 2029, which would be the last year of his deal. And like, that's a reasonable age to get another contract that's upper stratosphere. Probably won't be as rich as this one is. Once you get on the north side of 30, the big dollars usually stop coming so fast for the offers. And a lot of the ones that do come fast on the wrong side of 30, they don't age very well. That's, I think, about like what TJ Watt and the Steelers are going through right now. TJ Watt is 31. He was 30 last summer when he signed a 3-year, $123 million contract extension, $41 million a season. And everybody's already looking at that contract saying, I don't know. It didn't age great as far as how he played last season. And now he's on the wrong side of 30, right? So it kind of gets Brewer into this area where maybe, and obviously it's 2026. I'm talking about something that's coming down the pipe potentially in 2029. Right. But that would be something that I consider to be a win for Aaron Brewer, is a fighting chance to get back into another top center contract if we continue playing like a top center before we're into our mid-30s. And then it becomes a non-conversation. And that's probably where you get into the Jason Kelsey 1-year play and pay as you go type situations. Got more wins for Brewer in this deal. We'll get into that on the other side of the break. Make sure you guys stick with us. Workplace chaos can show up fast, deadlines stacking up, projects need attention, and on top of everything else, you are trying to fill an important role. The problem is that finding the right candidate can take a lot more time than most businesses can afford. That's where Indeed Sponsored Jobs comes in. Indeed Sponsored Jobs helps you reach candidates who actually fit what you're looking for based on skills, experience, and location, So you're spending less time sorting through applications and more time talking to qualified people who can help your business succeed. Finding the right person can make all the difference, whether it's building a business or building a winning team. The organizations that consistently succeed know how to identify the right talent and put them in positions to thrive, like Aaron Brewer. How's that? Spend less time searching, more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes, less stress, less time, more results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job that premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now. Support our show by saying that you heard about Indeed on the program. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions do apply. If you need to hire, this is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. Some of the other wins that I think stand out when athletes first is presenting to all future clients the job that they did on the Aaron Brewer contract, right? That's always everybody kind of wants to know, like, what's the resume sheet bullet points that get added for this deal. The third highest annual average on a center contract ever, in large part because the salary cap is ascending the way in which it is, right? Last year it was like 279. This year it's 301. That jump, that annual bump and increase in the salary cap year over year, all but guarantees that as guys continue to get paid market rate and the cap goes up, the raw dollars that are being spent is going to be higher and higher and higher for guys at top of market. I think that's a great talking point for the history of center contracts in the NFL. $17.5 million per season. That's pretty rich. That's not small money. It's also the highest total value for active center contracts for players older than 25 years old at the time of signing. We've already mentioned Brew is 28 years old. He turns 29 in October, at the end of October. Amongst centers who were older than age 25 at the time of signing, active contracts: Brewer, Connor McGovern at 13. And that also includes total value of the contract, because Connor McGovern signed at 13 per season, but it was 4 for 52. Brewer goes 3 for 52.5. So even like the full value, not the annual average, but the full value, it's a high watermark. We mentioned Elkton Jenkins getting 24. Tyler Biadasz goes 3 for 30 this year, and he was age 28 at time of signing. Robert Hainsey with the Jaguars went 3 for 21 and was 26 at time of signing. Now you're below $20 million for total value. You look at the all-time list, and it looks a little different. Amongst the 25 older than 25 club, this is actually the third highest total value of a contract for a center in NFL history. Now, of course, from an annual average, it only being 3 years, which is a win for Brewer. Corey Linsley goes for 62.5, but that was a $5 million or 5-year deal that he signed at age 29 back in 2021. So it's an average of 12.5 because it's 62.5 for over 5 seasons. Nick Mangold in 2011 is the only other contract that has a total value that's higher than Brewer's 52.5 for centers that were older than the age of 25 when they signed it. League history. And Mangold's was a 7-year deal that averaged $7.725 million per season. So there's a number of measures of value of this contract in raw value, adjusted value, through an age filter, in which the Brewer contract is among the best that the league has seen at the position. We've already mentioned the 3-year extension versus a 4-year deal and that timeline and how that aids Brewer in having an opportunity, if he continues to play well for several seasons, to get another new contract. But, one of the wins for the Dolphins that I have down is that the Tyler Linderbaum contract did not influence the negotiations. right? Because when Linderbaum signs for 27 and the Dolphins have to get an extension done with Aaron Brewer, you're like, ooh, it's that's a big number and a big gap between number one and number two. And does that get invoked into the conversation when you're trying to negotiate a deal? And the answer here clearly is no. Linderbaum ends up not influencing at all because Brewer doesn't even surpass Creed Humphrey, who had the previous high water mark. But he does get in front of Cam Jurgens at 17. And I think when you start getting into what the Dolphins' wins out of this negotiation are, I'm looking at the value as a percentage of the salary cap. The annual average is 17.5. What percent of this year's salary cap is that? And how does that equate to what Creed Humphrey got in 2024 when he signed for 18? Because the raw numbers say Brewer's getting $500,000 less per season. But what was the salary cap back then? Because that equates to what the level of the commitment was versus how much you had to spend. And the answer there is the Creed Humphrey contract was over 7% of that year's cap was the $18 million average. Aaron Brewer here and now getting $500,000 less at 17.5. It's 5.81%. That's fourth amongst active center contracts, and it's behind a name in Cam Jurgens, who I think is a comfortably lesser player than what Aaron Brewer has established himself to be as an NFL talent. That's where you start getting into the wins, I think, for the Dolphins. I think the other thing that you could do when you look at history of center contracts relative to the salary cap being what it is, I mean, Aaron Brewer's barely cracking the top 25. His percentage of cap for the annual average is a percentage of cap, which is the 17.5 divided by 301.2. It's 23rd all time in center contracts. It's behind names like Nick Martin in 2019 with the Texans, which was 5.84% versus 5.81% for Brewer. It's behind names like Cam Jurgens, who we mentioned. Brandon Linder back in 2017 was almost 6.2%. Ryan Jensen's on here a few times with the Bucks. Mike Pouncey back in 2015. His 5-year, $44.75 million contract was equivalent against that year's salary cap of 6.25%. So when you adjust the dollars for the salary cap inflation, this is a cheaper contract than what Mike Pouncey got back in 2015, 10 years ago. On the Linderbaum contract, obviously, is off the charts. It's almost 9%, and that's against this year's salary cap. So that's how you know it's a big number. Frank Ragnow and Creed Humphrey are the only other two contracts that are over 7% of as far as what the annual average was against that year's salary cap when those guys signed that contract. 23rd on the percentage of cap annual average for Aaron Brewer. That's a strong number for the Dolphins. But obviously, from a raw dollars perspective, it's a strong number for Aaron Brewer, and that's how these negotiations get done. Everybody gets enough bullet points. We feel like we're winning in the margins here. We're comfortable with the dollar amount, but when you adjust it for what spending power is, when you adjust it for history, when you adjust it for players in the age bracket, it's like the Plinko balls? Is that right? You drop the ball in the top and it slides its way down. That's what it's like. And you've got a bunch of those balls, and they end up getting a pretty even distribution on either side of the fence as far as what everybody can feel good about. I got a few more wins for the Dolphins. We'll get into that on the other side of the break. Make sure you guys stick with us. We've talked a lot about the growth of interior offensive line contracts and how it has kind of evolved the past few years from a dollars perspective. And I think you can look at some of the guard contracts that have been signed as of late, and you can really marvel what the Dolphins ended up getting Aaron Brewer for. Like, I loved Robert Hunt as much as the next guy. But Robert Hunt got 5 for $100 by the Panthers in 2024. Is he, from a annual average salary standpoint, $2.5 million greater back then. And from a percentage of cap standpoint, it's 2% more against what that year's cap was for a 5-year, $100 million contract than what Aaron Brewer is. I don't think the answer there is yes. And again, like I love Robert Hunt. I would have loved Robert Hunt to stay here long term, and I think he's a really, 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 really good pro. Will Fries last year in free agency was a guy who was a sufficient level starter, got more annual average playing guard than what Aaron Brewer got. He got 17.54. That was a 5-year contract, $87.7 million. Now it had marginally more in the way of guarantees. Fry's got $44 million in guarantees, and Aaron Brewer, it's been reported, is getting $37 million in guarantees. But this could end up working out in the Dolphins' favor too. Because if you remember with Devon Achane, this is what the number one thing that I'm looking for is the signing bonus in this contract, to figure out what is the cash up front when he already got a restructure from earlier in the season that got him cash up front. But remember what the Dolphins did with Devon Achane. The Devon Achane contract was reported as having $32 million in guarantees, which was a big deal because running backs generally are not getting above $30 million in guarantees on their contracts. But then you look at the actual practical guarantees when the contract is signed, and Devon Achane's practical guarantees was not $32 million. It was $27.378 million. So where did we get 32 from? It was the new money guarantees plus the money that he got when they converted his salary back in March that he'd already been paid. That was included in the guarantees that was reported by the insiders as guaranteed money when the contract went public. I mean, that is some savvy manipulation of numbers to get that number out there as a reported figure. And that's the game that's played when you're reporting contracts, right? So my question is for Aaron Brewer. He's got $37 million in reported guarantees on his contract. Does that number include the $5.25 million that he got back on March 20th when they converted his salary to create salary cap space? They took 5.25, paid it to him as a salary conversion with a basic restructure of the contract, saved $4.2 million in cap space, right? That was the reaction to the Jalen Waddle trade to make sure that we stay cap compliant, was we restructured Aaron Brewer's contract from a salary standpoint. Let's just converted the salary to a bonus to spread it out against the cap in the future years. So does Aaron Brewer get $37 million in guarantees, or does he really get $31.75 million in guarantees plus money that he's already received that is being reported as part of the guarantees of the contract? That's what I'm looking for. And we'll find out probably in a week when the numbers go public. They haven't done the formal at the desk with the smiling and the pen and the signing yet. We haven't got that yet. We did get Aaron Brewer doing a handspring backflip from the social account when it was reported. So that was your healthy reminder of just how athletic Aaron Brewer is. But the other wins that I have down for the Dolphins, avoiding the Tyler Linderbaum influence that we already talked about. The annual average as a percentage of cap ranks fourth amongst active center contracts. Rewarding another player that's done it the right way. Brewer talked about the importance of getting the reps with his guys and being here amidst the contract negotiation, and John Eric Sullivan talking about what their intentions were for this offseason. Putting yet another contract out in front of a guy and rewarding him for being a good player and doing things the right way and not making a fuss and being there for his teammates. And that's a lot of the positive reinforcement now, right? I mean, you're over $110 million in contractual commitments. Now, they might not give all that money out, and you got to look at the guarantees, and Brewer's got $37 million, and Achane's got $27 million. And that's still $65 million approximately in guarantees given out to guys. Two guys that didn't play the game when OTAs and minicamp hit. Those guys were here. They were present. They were involved. But another one of the wins that I have is when you look at the Brewer contract through the lens of interior offensive linemen. We've talked about the rate in which guard pay has really accelerated, right? And it was a big deal last year. Trey Smith got the franchise tag and then got an extension. It was a $94 million contract extension for Trey Smith. I can look at the guys at guard who are getting paid more than Aaron Brewer 17 and a half. And I see names like Will Fries, Sam Cosmi, Aaron Banks, Robert Hunt, Landon Dickerson, Trey Smith. I would take respectively Aaron at his position over those guys at their positions. And those guys are all getting paid more. That's part of, positional value. And I get that's a big piece of the puzzle. Now, guys like Quentin Nelson, Tyler Smith with the Cowboys, Quinn Miners, Creed Humphrey. Yeah, those guys are paid more. And I think they're probably have been consistently great for a while longer. And I think they've probably earned being out in front of Brewer from a annual average standpoint. But then you look at some of these other contracts that are just below him, and you're realizing what teams are spending for similar money for guards. And it's Zion Johnson with the Browns and Kevin Dotson with the Rams and David Edwards signing for 15 and a quarter with the Saints this offseason on a 4-year, $61 million contract. And that had $45 million in guarantees versus 37 for Brewer. Give me that contract 10 times out of 10, 100 times out of 10. And some of these guys are age 27. Joe Tooney was 32 when he signed his deal at $17.5 million per season. Banks was 27. Robert Hunt was 27. David Edwards was 28, just like Aaron Brewer is. And Cole Van Lanen's getting 17 per. He had a nice glow up this year, but he really kind of had like a one-off year with the Jaguars. I think when you look at interior offensive line play as a whole, this contract looks good too. Now, final thought. If you guys remember, every year I do the Miami Dolphins offseason blueprint, and I had a contract offer that I filed for Aaron Brewer back in March. This came the week before free agency, so it didn't have the numbers in for the Linderbaum contract yet. We didn't know Tyler Linderbaum was going to completely blow the roof off. But I had Brewer down 3 for 57 with a $15.875 million signing bonus. I was prepared to offer Brewer back in March $19 million per. The Dolphins got him at 17 and a half. That makes this as a default what I think is a plus value in my eyes for the Dolphins. Now, we've mentioned the signing bonus several times. That's a big talking point for who, quote unquote, won the negotiation for the first year of the deal. Because remember, Achane got a very small signing bonus stacked on top of and I don't know if that's just because he said, look, you've got your rookie contract and you're getting an escalator for performance pay. We're going to count that as not base salary, even though you've earned it with your play. You've also earned the signing bonus with your play. So we're going to roll them into one, and we're going to count that as part of your signing bonus. Achane got a $4.2 million signing bonus. You know how far down the list of running back contracts you have to go before you find a signing bonus that's lower than 4.2? Jeremiah Love, 35, rookie contract, whatever. Travis Etienne, formerly Etienne, now presumably Achane is how he said he'd like it pronounced. That was a $12 million signing bonus. Josh Jacobs, 12.5. James Cook, 9. Breece Hall, 5. Kenneth Walker, 13. Jonathan Taylor, 10.2. Christian McCaffrey, 14. Ramondre Stevenson, 8. These are all signing bonuses. Chuba Hubbard, 7.5. Derrick Henry, 11.75. Alvin Kamara, 15.5. Javonte Williams, 6. DeAndre Swift, signed in 2024, 3 for 24, got a $4 million signing bonus. That's how far down you have to get a signing bonus that was as low as what Achane got. Do I think Aaron Brewer will get that small of a signing bonus or that small of a percentage of a signing bonus where it's $4.2 million out of a $64 million deal for Achane? No, I don't think so. I think he'll get a sizable bump. I'd guess maybe it's a probably in the ballpark of a $10 million signing bonus, which would put his compensation this year around $17 million. And if you're looking at where that ranks for players, as I pull it up right now, I want player rankings, total cash, interior offensive lineman, total cash in 2026, 17 million would rank him outside with 31st. Quinn Miners is getting 17.36. Mike McGlinchey 17.5. Quentin Nelson's getting 18. Maybe the signing bonus is a little bigger. Maybe it's a $13 million signing bonus, puts him in that $20 million ballpark, which would put him top 20. Trey Smith's getting $20 million this year. If I asked you if you knew who was number one in the NFL for interior offensive line play after Tyler Linderbaum, who obviously signs a $27 million year contract, would you know who it was? Would you know what the dollar amount is? It's Tyler Smith getting 24, and then it's David Edwards getting 21.3. And then the vast majority of the rest of this is offensive tackles, and then Trey Smith at 20. So I don't think he'll get 13 plus on the signing bonus now, looking at the numbers. I'd guess 10. We'll find out. Kyle Krabs, that's a Brew crew. Everybody pour a brew for Brew today. Aaron Brewer staying on with the Dolphins 3 more years after 2026. A big win for those of us who have been asking for the team to fix this offensive line. You fix this offensive line by retaining talents like Aaron Brewer. It's a great day for the Dolphins, and that's it for us here on the show.